Welcome back to another episode of Better Than I Found It, the podcast that highlights so many great things about college golf. Today's guest is Oklahoma State women's coach Greg Robertson. G-Rob talks about the value of his parents' example and their influence on his coaching. He also reminisces and tells some really great stories about his days as a collegiate golfer. He also talks about his team's postseason run last spring, along with their incredible undefeated fall season this year. From this interview, it's easy to see why Greg has had so much success. Plus, he's just a great guy. Hope you enjoy the listening. Greg Robertson, G-Rob, welcome to Better Than I Found It. It's really an honor to have you on here today.
I appreciate it. I've been listening to your podcast for a while, so it's an honor to be on here.
Well, that's great. I appreciate that. You know, when I started this podcast, it was at the behest of my assistant coach, Mikkel. Mikkel decided that he thought we needed to have a podcast. And I wasn't crazy about the idea. But when he convinced me that having great guests, college players, college coaches, different people, and we could learn a lot. And so I made it a goal to just continually bring on people that I thought could help us out and teach us. And also kind of shed a positive light on college golf in general. Well, you're one of those people. So I've been wanting to have you on this podcast for a while. So thanks for taking the time today.
Well, thank you.
Before we get into your background in your coaching philosophy and all of that, let's talk about like the big elephant in the room. It's like this incredible fall season that your golf team has just completed. I mean, you guys went undefeated this fall at Oklahoma State in women's golf. That doesn't happen very often. So talk to me about this fall. Just give me a summary.
Yeah, it was a pretty special fall for us. And coming into the fall, we lost Maya Stark as a tour pro, and she went on. She's actually won a couple of European tour events since she turned pro. And, so she was ranked 5th in the world. She was a first team All-American. And so, that's, you lose somebody like that. It obviously, it's not easy to overcome. But we were fortunate that we had a good group still coming back. She was the only one actually that we lost from last year. And then we were able to get Kaylee McGinty, who was transferred from Kent State. We recruited her and signed her at Kent State, but we never got to coach her because we left and came to Oklahoma State. But she's a 2-time All-American, and she since has come in, and I believe she's ranked number 2 in the golf stat rankings and has done a heck of a job. And in addition to Clemence Martin, a freshman from France, who's done some good work, and everybody else had good summers coming in, has just played some solid golf, and so they played outstanding. As you know, it's a long season, and having some success in the fall is great, but we've got to continue to work hard and keep moving forward as a team as we get into the spring.
That's great. When I look at an undefeated season, I think there's so many things that can cause you to lose a golf tournament. I mean, it could be anything. Just a kid wakes up, didn't sleep right, has a crick in his neck, her neck, just doesn't feel very good and shoots 80 or whatever. There's just too many. Some team shoots 20 under par one round. I mean, there's a lot of things that make it hard to go undefeated. What's the biggest reason you think you guys were able to do that in the fall? And I realize you've got a long way to go in this season. There's a bunch of golf left, but you won 4 or 5 golf tournaments this fall. What's the biggest reason?
Well, I think we had 4 of the 5 that played at the NCAA championship back. And again, we've got a deep team. I think, we've got, players who didn't necessarily play in the lineup, that they're good quality, solid players. And so the competition that we have at home is big. But I think, having that experience from the team from the year before, and then adding, a couple quality players like Kaylee and Clemence, really, I think that's really what did it. And as the year went on, Kaylee won twice this fall. And so as the others started to see her play and probably gain some confidence in her, I think that helped. But they work hard. They're just a good group of ladies, it's a fun fun team to coach, because whether it's in the weight room, whether it's academically, they got a 3.65 team GPA, on the golf course, they just do such a great job and really everything they're doing. So, I mean, it's fun to watch them, and really, to be honest with you, I mean, it's just more or less just staying out of their way and letting them do their thing.
I like hearing that there's so many people forget that there's a genius in simplicity and doing less. That a lot of times it's like, these kids are pretty good. If I'll just stay away, they'll probably do okay.
Without a doubt.
Well, anyway, I want to wish you the best of luck as you continue to work through the year. But let's get back into a little bit of your background. You obviously played golf, but your dad was a coach, and I know you played football for your dad. So I want you to kind of take me through what it was like to play for your dad, what it was like to play a different sport for your dad, not golf, and then some things you may have learned from him. And I know your mom was a high school golf coach as well. So you've got coaching in your blood. So talk to me about that, the influence your parents had on you.
Yeah, we are a family of coaches, with my dad being a retired football coach and my mom having coached high school golf. And she actually coached a little bit of volleyball too. And then my sister's the head women's golf coach at Texas Tech. And so, but I still think back to my senior year in high school, and I was the quarterback of the football team. My dad was the offensive coordinator, and I think that was probably some of the most fun that I ever had playing a sport. And, and so our love for the game of football, I mean, is, it's about as big as anybody's. And so getting to work with him and do it my last year of playing football, was something special. My mom is the Mike McGraw of New Mexico golf. She coached 16 years high school golf and won 14 state championships and finished second the other 2 years. And so she might be the best coach of the family, to be honest with you. And then my sister, JoJo, she's made it to match play at the NCAA championship one year. And so, but I think what I learned from my parents, I mean, their love for what they did, was huge. And then the work that they put into it, those two things right there are what I really got from them, and I saw from them as I was growing up. And as a family, I mean, we've just like every family, we've got a group text, and we're always passing along ideas and quotes and things that we read to each other. And so, we're constantly helping each other out, learning. Even my dad at 74 years old right now. I mean, he's retired. He's still drawing up plays, football plays on his notepad and watching games on Saturday, doing that stuff and trying to come up with new ideas. And so I just see that. And that's where, if I continue to have love for the game of golf and for coaching like they did in their careers, I can see myself doing this for a long time.
That's really good to hear. I don't know if you know this. You've seen John Wooden's, his Pyramid of Success. I'm sure you've seen that. But the two cornerstones on there are the exact two things you just said: enthusiasm and industriousness, or work ethic.
Yeah.
So if you love what you do and you work hard at it, that you can build on. And I don't know if you meant to reference that, but it's what popped into my mind immediately.
No, that's really is the first thing that that does come to my mind with him. And I look back. I mean, my mom, it's really amazing. A little town in Roswell, New Mexico. And she had at one time, and she kind of grew the girls golf team there so much that she had one year, she had 28 girls come out for the golf team.
Wow.
And, and she coached, Jarena Pilar, who went on to be an Olympian and Solheim Cup player. My sister was a Curtis Cup player. So just that little town in New Mexico, has had a lot of success and a lot of great players come through it.
Your mother, I never realized she won 14 state championships. That's incredible. That's great. Well, I think the love and work ethic, those two things go hand in hand. If you love what you do, you'll work harder at it. If you work hard at it, you're probably going to love it. So
exactly.
Yeah, very good. Well, so you obviously were a good junior player, good enough that you came on a visit to Oklahoma State when Mike Holder was the head coach, and you decided to make Oklahoma State your home. So I know that every coach in recruiting we say certain things. We tell kids this, we tell them that, we paint this picture, we paint that picture. But I'm pretty sure Mike Holder never talked to you about what your first day in Stillwater would be like. I want you to describe that first day as a freshman in Stillwater, Oklahoma.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, just going back to the recruiting process. I mean, Coach Holder he tells you how it is. And I still remember, and we were talking about this the other day. I mean, when I came in, I remember specifically him telling me, you know what, I want you to come here. And if you come here, I want you to beat every player that we have on the team. But you know what? I'm going to go out and I'm going to try to recruit players over the next 3 or 4 years that are going to come in and kick your butt. And so, those are the things that, he was straight up, he was honest with you, with everything in the recruiting process. But going back to my first day on campus, I remember showing up, my parents just kind of packed my car and sent me off. They didn't come up here with me. So I was just by myself. And I stayed with a guy named Billy Brown, who's from Stillwater, played on the golf team, and stayed with him that first night. And he tells me he got a call from Coach Holder, and he said, Coach wants everybody out at Karsten Creek. And at the time, Karsten was just being built, and basically everything had been done except for they were sodding the entire golf course. And so he said, he wants everybody out there and come in something that you can get dirty in. And so we all show up. There are about 10 or 11 of us that show up out there, and we're in our workout stuff, and it's one of those August days in Stillwater, those 95 to 100 degrees and humidity, where you step out of your house and you're already sweating 5 minutes later. And we get out there and all of a sudden these big semis just start pulling up with loads of sod. And nowadays, they have those big rolls where you can just roll them down the fairway and it's easy. Well, back then they were just little squares, and it's like, puzzle pieces, just fitting them in. And we laid sod for a good 10 plus hours that day, and just enough time to take a little lunch break and get right back at it. And we sodded probably 2/3 of the 18th fairway, which I was talking to Travis, the superintendent, at one point this year. We were talking about that story, and he said that the amount of work that we did that day it would have taken the workers that they had close to 5, 6, 7 days to complete. So we got to work, and we just never stopped. And Coach Holder was right there with us doing the exact same thing. And as Coach, what he likes to do is he wants people to have an appreciation for what you have, and also have a hand in some of that stuff. And so that was his goal was to, we're going to be out there. We're going to be a part of this. It's a special place, Karsten Creek. And you guys are going to appreciate a little bit more having put some, do some dirty work and have an appreciation for the golf course. And so, and it wasn't just that day. I remember a time where we got to practice and for the entire time we went around the whole golf course, everybody spread out across the fairway, and we were just sanding divots. And so he had that way of doing things, but it's a great story. It's one of those stories where every time we get together as a group, for the team that did it, that's one of the first things that comes up that we start talking about it, and we laugh about it now. We hated it then, but I think we have an appreciation for why it was done, and looking back on it, it's a great story.
Well, I know one of those players was Bo Van Pelt. He's still playing professional golf.
Yep.
And the first thing he did was lay sod all day long at Karsten Creek. When my last year at Oklahoma State, we built a short game green that you guys still use today.
Yep.
And I made sure that our guys laid the sod for the same reason. That wasn't quite the job, but we laid the sod around the green. We planted the green, but we laid the sod, the Bermuda sod. So I think that's an important thing. Make somebody appreciate it a little bit more. And I'm sure every time you walk down the 18th fairway, you probably think about that day.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, probably the one that was in the biggest shock of it all was Leif Westerberg, who had just come from Sweden, probably never really seen heat like this before and sun like this. And probably was wondering what he was getting into when he showed up and Coach Holder's having him lay sod like that on his first day as well.
Again, sometimes in recruiting, coaches forget to give the full story about what it's going to be like. But I will say this, Mike was always willing to, not willing, he was kind of eager to make sure he did the same thing you were doing. And so I learned that from him. I thought that was a good lesson to teach, but also just letting kids appreciate all that's being done for them by involving them in it, which was great.
Yep.
So a couple of other stories that step out in my mind of your time at OSU. One is, I believe it was your first tournament you played in. It was in Hawaii. And it was a practice round. And it was the very first hole. Please describe that one for me, because if the story that I got is accurate, it's pretty good.
Yeah. So it was in Hawaii, and Chris Tidland, they played 2 tournaments in Hawaii that year. And Chris Tidland had qualified for the PGA tournament at Riviera. And so he flew there, and I flew out to Hawaii by myself. This was my first college tournament ever. And the team, it was that year that, Stanford and Oklahoma State were 1-2. Tiger was playing for for Stanford his freshman year. And we get out there, and I was a bit of a nervous Nelly out in college anyway. So this was, a big deal to me. I probably blew it up into an even bigger deal than it should have been. But, Stanford's coming down the fairway on the first hole. It's a shotgun start. We're teeing off on number 2. We're all standing around. I was last to hit. Coach Holder's reading the newspaper, and I was, back then those tees weren't very long. They weren't long like they were today. So I was hitting a driver where I had to barely get that tee in the ground, because I
This is a practice round, right?
This is a practice round. And so I've got this ball teed up, and I take it back, and as I'm starting my downswing, that ball starts to tip over, and I try to kind of stop my swing a little bit, but I get right through it. Ball falls off the tee. I hit the tee, ball's on the ground. I basically whiffed the shot. And my teammates were on the ground laughing. And Coach Holder just kind of, like he does, he just kind of calmly, he lowered his newspaper because he didn't see it. And he looked at me, and he looked at the ball, and he said, "Did you just whiff that?" and I was speechless. I had no idea what to say, what to do. Now at this point, I'm so rattled, is what's going on. But yeah, that's another one of those stories that, my teammates, especially ones that were there, like to remind me of. But, and of course the best part is the book that was written, about that year. That story is in that book. So, of all the great things that, that happened at Oklahoma State that year and winning the national championship and that book being written, the one thing written about me was that tee shot that I whiffed on the very first hole of the practice round. Basically my first shot in college golf.
Well, you got in the book anyway. And by the way, the name of that book is called The Last Putt. Yep. And it's a wonderful depiction of Oklahoma State and Stanford, the 1994-95 school year, from the finals of the U.S. Amateur, where Tiger Woods beat Trip Keeney, all the way through to the playoff between Stanford and Oklahoma State. The whole year.
Great book.
It's a fantastic book. If anybody if you go on Amazon and try to find a used copy or eBay, I think it's worth your reading. It's a great book about college golf.
Yep.
The Last Putt. So you got to get that. Now the book's quite old now. It's 10 or 12 years old, but it's a great book. So one other story was your practice round the following year at Prairie Dunes for the conference championship. You'd heard so many stories about Prairie Dunes. And if anybody that knows me knows that's one of my favorite places on planet Earth. Just think it's got the greatest green complexes. It's not long, but it needs wind to have some defense. And you're playing a practice round for the conference championship. Talk about that.
Yeah. So going into the tournament, all I kept hearing from Coach Holder was just how great this golf course was, how tough it is. And I agree with you. It's no doubt one of the best golf courses I've ever played. But we get out there in the practice round, and it's 75, 80 degrees, sunny and dead calm. And we get around the practice round, and I don't remember saying this, but Coach Holder says that he heard me say this coming off of the 18th green, something to the effect of, I don't know what the big deal is that Coach Holder's making about this golf course. It didn't seem that tough. But the next day, it was one of those days in Kansas in spring where it went to about 45 degrees. The wind's coming from the north, is about a 20-mile-an-hour wind. And I remember getting up on the first hole, and I hit the green in 2, and I 4-putted. And I come walking off that green, and Coach Holder's standing off the green. And he goes, G-Rob, you better have your heart and soul in it today, or you're going to shoot you a serious number. And I did. And, and so he likes to give me a hard time about that. I mean, I bet you I've been here 2.5 years. He's probably told that story to me and many others probably 10 times. But yeah, that's a good lesson learned. I mean, it's just, you got to be in it. You got to be ready to play. You certainly, can't overlook anything. It's just, it's a good golf course. And that particular day in the practice round, it didn't seem that tough. But when that wind blew and it got cold, I mean, that course is a beast.
I love the fact that it still has relevance in a day and time when length is so important to people, that when the wind blows over 20, you've got a real test on your hands.
For sure.
Those are 3 stories right there about your time at Oklahoma State. One thing we haven't talked very much about is your teammates. I think at one point you had 9 or 10 guys on the team at the same time that were All-Americans at some point in their career. That doesn't happen very often. What did you learn being on a team like that?
I mean, that my freshman year, there were 17 guys on the team. And that was a year that they were just coming off finishing out of the top 5 at the NCAA championship for the first time in Coach Holder's career. So he had gone, I don't know, something like 19, 20 straight years of finishing in the top 5. And they had a poor performance at the NCAA championship that year. He wasn't real happy. Brought in a big freshman class. I think we had 4 or 5 freshmen that came in that year, plus a couple transfers. Trip Keeney was one. And so, but that particular year, we had 9 All-Americans on the same team. And it wasn't not everybody that year, but Jackson Brigman and Brandon Knight were All-Americans in previous years and weren't getting in the lineup. Mm-hmm. And then all 5 of them that were in the lineup, which were Alan Bratton, Trip Keeney, Chris Cox, Chris Tidlin, and Leif Westerberg. All 5 were All-Americans. And then you had Bo Van Pelt and Brian Goots on the team that weren't getting in the lineup, but later became All-Americans, year 2, 3 years down the road. I mean, the competition, the level of golf that year, I mean, I'm not sure that'll really ever be matched by any team. But I mean, just learned a lot from getting to play with and against those type of players day in and day out. Again, the toughest tournament all year was going to be in that qualifier, trying to get in the lineup. And so I think that in itself is kind of what made the team tough. They got to tournaments and just like most Coach Holder teams, not too much phased them. And they were mentally tough and ready to go each week.
I think one of the things that's often overlooked, a lot of kids shy away from an experience like that. And they forget, if I still have a dream to play the PGA Tour, why am I worried about some college golfers? I hope there's more good players here to make me better. But I don't think everybody takes that attitude. I think a lot of them say, well, there's some good players around it. Now, I agree, too. You don't want to go and play at a place where you have no chance to ever compete in the lineup.
Right.
That's not good either. But there, you had a great experience, and you eventually did make it into the lineup.
Yeah, I did. And my career here at Oklahoma State, as far as my golf was concerned, I mean, it wasn't what I had envisioned it coming in. I mean, I had some moments where I did some good things and played some good golf, but I struggled a bit as well. Looking back on it, I wish I knew then what I know now. And I think if I had the mentality that I do now, or maybe if I listened a little bit more to Coach Holder and what he was saying, I probably, would have been a better player. But I think part of, some of my struggles that I had in college, I think is maybe what makes me hopefully a good coach, because I can kind of see some of the things before they even happen with players, because I knew, they happened to me in college. And so I learned a lot, that year, not just in terms of the good stuff and getting to play with all those players, those great players, but also, I had to deal with some things and overcome some things. And most of it was in my head. So there was a lot of learning that took place. And I think, that's kind of helped me out a little bit as a coach, now that I look back on it, and that was, 20 some years ago. I think I can draw from some of that and use that as help when I coach these players.
That's really good. I think when I was an assistant coach, I was thinking the very same thing at the time. And before that, even when I was a high school coach, I had learned so much from my failures as a player that some of those things you can apply to a player on your team.
Sure.
So you did play mini tours for 2 or 3 years and had moderate success, but at some point you realized I probably am not going to do this forever.
Right.
I remember you coming to Coach Holder and asking him if he had a position as a volunteer assistant. And I was thinking, wow, that's quite a commitment right there, because the volunteer assistant's just that. You're not getting paid.
Right.
So anyway, let's talk about that a little bit. I want you to talk about the biggest piece of advice you would give a young coach wanting to get into coaching, because you were a young coach.
Yeah.
You were desperately wanting to get into the game, and you made a major sacrifice to not get paid for a year.
Right.
Talk about that.
Yeah. So when I, decided that I wanted to get into coaching, and I played a couple years, I went to Q school a couple times, played on the Canadian tour. But I felt at the time, if I felt I was right on the brink of, getting over that hump, I would have continued. But I felt at the time that, I wasn't quite there. And that, I didn't want to be a 35-year-old playing mini tours. And so, I needed to move on. And so my last year of playing, I went to Q school that year while I was a volunteer, made it to second stage. But I was, prior to that, I was looking at, some websites, different college teams, and, just because I was interested in maybe getting into coaching. And I noticed, I think it was at the University of Florida, they had a volunteer position. I didn't even know that existed. So I got to thinking, well, that maybe I ought to do that, as I'm playing my last year, and get myself some experience, especially coming from Oklahoma State, something to put on my resume. And so I did. I called Coach Holder up, and I wasn't sure what he'd say, but he welcomed me, come up and do this. And so I had to, I worked at Carson Creek behind the counter, making minimum wage. I was still playing a little bit. And then I was the volunteer coach. I had a lot going on. And it was a big sacrifice, and so, but fortunately for me, I learned a lot from you and from Coach Holder. And the very next summer, the job at Purdue came open, and Devin Browse just happened to be talking to Coach Holder. I think it was at the U.S. Junior, and Coach Browse said, "Hey, I'm looking for an assistant. Do you know anybody out there?" And he said, "Well, yeah, I've got somebody, here in Stillwater that would be great." And that all worked out perfectly for me. And so, that year, was good for me. It was tough because financially it was a struggle, but it was great to be able to be in that position, to learn from, a couple great coaches like you and Coach Holder, and then also be able to put that on my resume. So, I think for any young coach that's getting into or wants to get into coaching, it's not nowadays it's getting a lot tougher to get these jobs. It's very competitive. And so, it's you got to find a way to get your foot in the door, whether it be something like that as a volunteer coach. I think, reaching out and talking to different coaches and learning from as many people as you can, making connections, might be golf camps, it might be a volunteer job, all of those things. And then once you get to that point, and you get your foot in the door, at that point right there, it's all about what you do. And, and so your hard work and also the, how good of a coach you are, that's going to tell everything. And so, but don't leave any stone unturned. If you want to get into coaching, find a way to get your foot in the door. And then from that point on, work your butt off, learn as much as you can from as many different people as you can. And I mean, for me, I'm still learning every day. And I mean, I remember my first year as a head coach, my first summer as a head coach at Kent State. We were recruiting at the European Girls Team Championship, and I caught a ride in a car with Dan Brooks from Duke, and it was about 2.5 hours to the airport. And I mean, I just did nothing but ask questions for 2.5 hours, and and that was a valuable time. I mean, my time with Coach Holder here at Oklahoma State. I mean, I still go to lunch with him 2-3 times a month, and I'm still learning from him. And so, I mean, never stop learning. Work your tail off, and do everything you can to get your foot in the door and make those connections.
Very well said. And when young coaches come to me and ask for advice on how to get into coaching, how to get into the college golf scene and whatever, you mentioned two things: one, working camps, and connecting and making connections with coaches. But if you're going to work a camp, you may as well be the best employee that camp has ever had. Why wouldn't you be the best employee they've ever had? And some coach is going to say something to somebody. The college golf world's so small, so incredibly small. I mean, everybody I know. Everybody I know, It's like there's no secrets here. So those things are important. And you spent 11 years at Purdue as both a men's and women's assistant coach. So you did the most you could with that opportunity that Mike Holder kind of got you ready for. But since you did coach men and women on both sides, what do you think is the biggest difference between coaching men and women? I mean, like what would stand out? Because some coaches say, well, if I start coaching women, will I ever be able to coach on the men's side? And I always tell them, don't go in with that attitude. Go in with, I'm going to be the best coach for this women's team I can possibly be. And who knows what the future will hold. So anyway, what do you think are the biggest differences in men and women coaching wise?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, what I found coaching women is that they tend to listen a little bit more. And so if they have a trust in you, they tend to listen in terms of, whether it's, what you want to work with them on or anything else. I think that's probably one of the biggest things. I think there's certainly, a difference in how you handle situations and deal with things, individually or with the team. I personally think I'm a better women's coach than a men's coach. And I think part of it because I feel like I'm a little bit more relaxed and laid back as a women's coach. And I think that helps. When I was at Purdue, and I was coaching the men as well as the women, I mean, I think I was too intense with the guys. One thing I did find out is that you've got to be yourself when you're a coach. And that's another thing I would just add to that other question that you asked is you got to be yourself. And my dad was an old school football coach, Coach Holder. I played for him. I went into that kind of trying to be them. And I found out that didn't work very well. And I think when I got into coaching and spending more time with women, I got a little bit more relaxed and laid back with the job, and I wasn't as intense. And I feel like I've developed better relationships with the women's players because of that. And but I think both men and women, coaching men and women, they both have their challenges in different ways. And so, but I would just say that, the women tend to listen a little bit more. And you handle things a little bit differently, with the men and with the women, on an individual or team basis. But so what are some of the things that you found that were different?
Well, that's good that you gave me that question, because I was going to say something. First of all, you mentioned being authentic, being yourself. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you're not as intense as those other coaches you play for, because doesn't fit your personality. Yeah. But you are equally as disciplined as those guys. So I don't think your discipline has ever changed.
Right.
And I don't think you should change that. So what do I think are the biggest differences between men and women? I would echo exactly what you said. They listen better, and they'll run through a wall for you if they think you believe in them, the women. Yeah. too.
Yep.
I don't think the guys are as inclined to do that. But I also think the biggest difference for me is there will be more drama on a women's team. When I coached women's golf, it seemed like there was more drama naturally than there would be on the men's team. That's not a negative. There just seems to be more. Guys, if they get upset with each other, they just kind of punch each other in the nose. And the next day they're out hitting wedge shots together. The girls, maybe it just takes a little bit longer for them to kind of deal with those emotions they're dealing with. That was my experience. And so I would say just understanding that.
Yeah. When I first got to Purdue and Coach Rouse was coaching both the men and women, and that's what my job was, to work with both teams, although I worked mostly with the men. He said that, his experience was that, the girls had to like you a little bit more. The guys had to respect you a little bit more. And maybe there's some truth to that.
Yeah. Devin's a great coach, by the way. I think I learned, in fact, thinking about what you learn from coaches. I remember talking to Devin one time and I was saying, I'm really struggling with the attitudes on my guys' team. Really struggling with. They've got bad attitudes. And he says, Coach, there aren't good attitudes or bad attitudes.
There's right or wrong.
That work and there's attitudes that don't work. You need to get that right, get that straight. I've never forgotten that. I wrote it in my journal. It's like, that's pretty much, we think we know what a bad attitude looks like, but if it's working, maybe it's not a bad attitude.
And that's the thing. He always looked at it as being right or wrong, and is either working for you or is working against you. And I think that's one of the things I look back on my career, just talking about Coach Brous here, and I feel like I'm probably the luckiest coach out there, and to think back as to who I was able to spend time with throughout my career, and that I played for Coach Holder, who I think is the best college golf coach ever. His assistant was Bruce Hepler, who, has done pretty much everything he can in college golf. Hasn't won a national championship, but it wouldn't surprise me if he wins one at some point before his career's over. And Coach Holder's won so many national championships, had so many, runner-up finishes, top fives. And then I get to work with you for a year. You've won a national championship. I go up to Purdue. I worked with Coach Brous, and while I was there, the women's team won a national championship. Even at my time, I spent my last year when I was working on my graduate degree at New Mexico. Played for JT Higgins. He went on to win a national championship. And then I go to Kent State and work with Herb Page, who's probably one of the more underrated coaches out there. The job that he did in building that program, I got to learn from him. And now I've come back to Oklahoma State, and I get to work with my old teammate, Alum, and he's won a national championship. So, it's just, I've been so fortunate to be able to learn from everybody and hear those little nuggets like you just talked about with Coach Brous and just take all of that in. It's been a real blessing for me to be around those people.
Most people are not going to have the experience you've had. I tell you, to be around that many national championship coaches, that's pretty amazing. To speak about that, you're now coaching at Oklahoma State, which is your alma mater. You played at Oklahoma State. Mm-hmm. And I want you to talk about what kind of an honor and a thrill that is, but also I want you to talk about the fact that Oklahoma State has, I think, 5 head coaches that played their sport at Oklahoma State. You've got Mike Gundy, the football coach. Alan Bratton's the men's golf coach. You're the women's golf coach. Josh Holliday is coaching baseball, and John Smith wrestling. What kind of an honor is that to come back to your alma mater and coach?
Yeah, it's pretty special, and it's special to be around those guys. We all have a love for the university, and that's what's great about Coach Holder, is that he has a love for the university and wanted to as an AD to bring people back who are good coaches that went to school here and share that same love. And I'll say that when I was at Kent State and this opportunity came open, the decision wasn't probably as easy as a lot of people might have thought it was going to be. We had a great home there in Ohio, great schools. The team was doing well at Kent State, and so we really did like it there. It was after the national championship when I talked to Coach Holder. I came in here and took a visit and just kind of, it'd been a while since I've been back to Stillwater, but when I kind of got here, I saw everything. It just kind of felt like home. But I think there's going into it. I'll be honest. I mean, the expectations here were a lot different than at Kent State, and that's one thing that I thought about is that we've got a pretty good deal going at Kent State. You've got to perform when you get to Oklahoma State, and and I look at some other coaches and even other sports. Take Boise State, for instance, for their football team. A lot of coaches went through there having a lot of success and then went on to, big time Power 5 jobs and didn't quite have the same success. And so these things kind of entered my mind as I'm kind of trying to make this decision. But in the end, my wife is from Stillwater. Her dad lives in Stillwater. It's closer to home with my family in New Mexico. And again, I mean, when I got back here and I was in Stillwater and just, looked around and just kind of just realized that this was home. That really made the decision for me.
Well, it was a good decision. Obviously, you built that program up in a very short time. Let's talk real quick about last spring.
Uh-huh.
You guys had a great championship run in the postseason. Talk about that, because you were on the precipice of winning a national championship.
Yeah, we, of course, it was a crazy year at the beginning of, in the fall. We had, two of our players weren't even here. We had a freshman, Madison Henson-Tolchard, that couldn't get here from Australia. Han, she decided not to come from Taiwan just because of COVID. We had some issues with COVID, had a couple players, that were in quarantine, multiple times. Maya Stark stayed over in Europe for the beginning of the semester to play in some tournaments because we didn't even know if we were going to be competing. So it was a bit of a mess, just like it was for everybody. But when we got here in the spring, we had the whole team, created again more competition within the team. They really started to develop and throughout our tournament play. And especially into March, April, and May. And when we won our tournament in Arizona, we beat Texas by a shot, I think. And then we really kind of started rolling from that point. And where I think I realized that this was a pretty special team and we had something going pretty good was our last regular season stroke play tournament, the Brezzy, that North Texas hosted. And we had Maya Stark and Isabella Fierro playing at the Augusta National Tournament, so they weren't even in the lineup, and we went down there and won the tournament. That's when I kind of started to think like this could be something special. We got them back in the lineup, for the Big 10 or Big 12 championship, and played really well, and won. I think we won by 16 shots and shot maybe 32 under, something like that, and just really had it going. And so we got into the NCAA championship and played solid in those the stroke play rounds. Had the third seed, and we met some tough teams. Auburn, had won the SEC championship. We met them at first, and they gave us a good match. Then we meet up with Duke, who was really the defending national champions, and just had an outstanding day that day and beat them 5-0. And we ran into a good Mississippi team, a great Mississippi team. And they, had, a team full of fighters, great match play team. And we gave it a run, came up a little bit short, but it was a special time. And I think it was something just kind of hopefully the start of building something good here. But the players, the experience that they got from that, and how much fun they had. I think they've carried that over into the summer and into this year, just with the hard work and wanting to get back to that point.
Well, getting to that point, it's not easy. It's never easy. It shouldn't be easy, but it's great that you were able to get them to that spot. And maybe the next time they get there, they'll get the thing all the way to the finish line. But so congratulations on everything you've done so far at OSU. Before we finish, I've got a couple of things I want to ask.
Mm-hmm.
One is a question that I ask a lot of different coaches and players. It would be the best piece of advice, or two pieces of advice, or three, whatever your best advice for a 14-year-old wanting to get into college golf and then play professional golf. It could be male or female, but just somebody at age 14 that really wants to do this in college. What's the best piece of advice you have for them?
Well, I think, kind of going back to what we talked about with coaching, you got love what you do, and enjoy the process of, getting out there and working, and there's no substitute for hard work. Putting in the time, find somebody that you trust with that can help you out with your golf game, but put in the time, put in the work, get out there and compete. I think, competition's great, and challenge yourself, and so the college coaches, they want to see scores and they want to see you compete, but they also want to see, players that, that are going to have good grades in school. They're going to take care of that part because we miss so much school when we play college golf, but also, show them that you're competitive, but also show them that you've got the right attitude when you're out there competing, and that, that you're going to be a good teammate. Once you get to school, you're going to be a good person. There's a lot that goes into the recruiting process, and that's quite a bit of it right there. And, but I think those are some of the things that, that are extremely important for somebody that's wanting to get into it. But also, reach out to some coaches, and as you mentioned earlier, I mean, you want to go to a place that's going to challenge you, but also you want to go to a place where you can play and compete. And so, do some research and find out about teams and find out about coaches and find what's going to be the right fit for you. I think that's really the main thing. And so, those would be my pieces of advice for a junior golfer that's wanting to get into college golf.
Thank you for that, G-Rob. That's very, very well said, and great advice for anybody that's young and wants to do this. So I know you have a busy spring schedule planned. Tell me where you'll be playing this spring as a team.
Yeah, we start off in January. We got a little match against Arizona State, Denver, Kansas. Ole Miss will be there. So that'll be our first tournament. From there, we go to Florida. Columbia is hosting a tournament in Florida that's it's got a good field. We're going to Houston's tournament, be played at the Golf Club of Houston, and then we go back to Florida for the Gator Invitational. We have then we go out to Arizona for the Mountain View Invitational hosted by Kansas State. From there, we have a match play event that we're doing with Texas Tech, OU, and Tulsa. That'll be in Lubbock, and then we finish up with the Brezzy Invitational at North Texas, and then we got the postseason after that. So we've got a good full schedule planned. I mean, we're ready to go. I'm already excited to get the season going, but we still got a little bit of time. But this downtime will be good for everybody to kind of get rested and be ready once January hits. Yeah, that is quite a schedule. They'll need a little rest just to get prepared for that. That's for great. Sure. What a schedule! Yeah, we've got a lot of 2-day tournaments on our schedule. So we probably schedule more tournaments than most teams do because we do play a lot of 2-day tournaments. Are those 36-18? Yeah. That's another reason to be in shape, right? 36, absolutely. That's a tough day. Well, listen, sure. Again, congratulations on all the incredible success you've had so far. I know you've got a lot in front of you, but just best of luck going forward, G-Rob, and thanks for being on Better Than I Found It. Well, I appreciate you having me on. Hopefully we can do it again.